This podcast is for anyone who has ever felt stuck, whether it's a major life transition, a dark night of the soul, or just staying small out of fear. If you've ever struggled to move forward, if you're repeating unhealthy patterns in relationships, or you have a black belt in beating yourself up, you were meant for more, and this podcast is for you. We'll get real, we'll get vulnerable, we'll probably cuss a little bit, and we'll get to the root of it all, your self-worth. With every step, you'll find the courage to rise.
How many times in the quiet of your mind have you watched someone else and played the comparison game in your head, where you have seen someone that is either doing something or has something or is experiencing something, and in your head you are comparing them, like you're doing almost like a side-by-side comparison of they're doing this and they're doing this and I'm not doing that, and have judged yourself and have possibly started to feel jealous of where they are. And then sometimes you slide down the slippery slope of judging the shit out of that person as well, or maybe fallen into the game of sour grapes, which is a whole other podcast. But if you have ever caught yourself playing the comparison game, then this podcast is especially for you. Because comparison is a corollary of the lie that you are not enough. And the comparison game is happening unconsciously, because I think we can all agree that we wouldn't consciously choose to feel crappy about ourselves, but it's happening unconsciously behind the scenes. And my goal for you in the minutes that we have together today is to talk a little bit about why the comparison game is actually an illusion. And when you notice that come up within yourself, how to stop it and what to do instead. So you know that if left unchecked, that comparison game is just going to show up. It's going to be running on autopilot. It's going to happen every time, if there's something that you're working toward in your life, whether it's seeing somebody that has a type of relationship you want, a job you want, or did a presentation at work and you find yourself comparing yourself to them wherever it shows up. And I know that you know where this shows up in your own life. And I also know that because you're here listening to my podcast, you are a sparkly being who has decided you no longer want to be controlled by those unconscious impulses and unconscious thoughts. And so you've heard me say before, and I think I even said it on my last podcast, you are 1 in 8 billion human beings on this planet, and not one of those other 8 billion people are exactly like you. My mentor likes to say, and I love this so much, you are an unrepeatable miracle. You are so fucking unique that there is literally no one else out there exactly like you, which means that you, my dear, are walking your own path. Your soul is on its own journey. No one has your exact energetic signature at this exact point in time. No one has your exact DNA and biology and the combination of all of the experiences and all of the talents and abilities and gifts. And you are truly unique. And beyond that, everyone is on their own unique journey. No one is running the same race that you're running. And I almost don't like the race comparison because it implies that there's a there. So let's just say no one is on the life journey that you are on. You very specifically came into this human experience. Fun sidebar, your soul chose absolutely everything about this experience, but more on that another time. You came into this human experience to have a certain set of experiences, to learn, to grow, to go through certain things, and to evolve your consciousness and to evolve as a soul. And wherever you are is exactly where you're meant to be on your journey, and you're on the exact timeline that you are meant to be on. And when we compare ourselves to other people, it really is this really cute form of madness, because no one is you. No one is on your path. That's their path. That's not your path. You don't know their story. Everyone has a story and has been through hell and back to get where they are. They're either just starting the journey or you just don't know their story. You don't know what they have overcome. You don't know anything about their story. You don't know their energy. You maybe, for example, everyone has different energetic blueprints. I highly recommend you get a human design reading, but more on that later. DM me if you need a recommendation. You don't know their energetic signature. Their entire energy could be wired very differently. I'm a manifesting generator. I can do all the fucking things all the fucking time as long as I am super lit up by what I'm doing. And somebody who is a projector, for example, has a different energetic signature. So you can't compare the two, because it's like comparing apples to kumquats and saying it's going to taste the same in whatever it is I'm making. You don't know their talents, their gifts, their abilities. You don't know the inner battles that they fought or are still fighting. Their progress in their own life says absolutely nothing about you. And their success doesn't say anything about you. And you truly don't know what's going on inside of them. And so that comparison game that you're playing, it's not really a game, because a game implies that there's a winner. Comparison is really just another way for you to feel real crappy about yourself. And if you're here listening to my podcast, if you're in my world, then I know for a fact that somewhere within you, you have said, I no longer want to feel crappy about myself. I no longer want to be the one with the bat beating myself up about this thing, right? So with this idea, and even if you're sitting there going, I don't know if I believe you about the soul thing, it really doesn't matter if you believe me or not, right? You can hear what I'm saying, and there's some part of you that knows it is true, that there is not one other person on this planet that is exactly like you. The closest you can come is if you're a twin, and if you're an identical twin, and even if you're an identical twin, you are not the same person. You may have a lot of similarities, but identical twins are still two unique souls and unique individuals. So when we're comparing ourselves to someone else, we're basically taking one unique thing, looking at another unique thing, and going, why is this not the same? And it's kind of cute, right? When you think about it in those terms, you go, wait a minute. Okay, this makes sense. Now, what you can do when you notice yourself feeling like you're comparing yourself to someone else, or maybe you're comparing yourself to a group of people, it doesn't matter. What you're doing is you're first and foremost catching yourself when you're doing it, because if we're not aware of something, then we can't do anything about it. So this podcast is helping to raise your awareness and to presence it within your awareness that this is something that you do sometimes. We've all done it. And so when it comes up for you, when you catch yourself comparing yourself to someone else, it's a beautiful time to stop and just lovingly say, oh, I see you. You're doing that thing again. Isn't that cute? Okay, well, let's talk about this. Have a little conversation with yourself. I talk to myself all the time. I highly recommend it. Have a little conversation with yourself and get curious about what's going on within you. Because the other thing I want to say to you is that there's a very big difference between comparison and beating yourself up and tearing yourself down that you're not where that person is, or you don't feel you did as good a job as they did, or whatever story that you're spinning off into the shit spiral, and taking inspiration from someone. So the next time you catch yourself in that, get curious about what's going on within you. Have that conversation with yourself and ask yourself, what is it they have that I desire? What is it that person, maybe let's go with this example. If they did maybe a presentation at work, or they did a presentation somewhere, and you're just like, wow, they did a really awesome job. And then you catch yourself going into, well, I couldn't do that. My graphics weren't as good. My PowerPoint wasn't that good. I was, whatever the shitty story is. Well, you want to stop and you just want to notice what's going on within yourself. And then you can look at celebrating that person's success, because their success does not detract from you in any way. And their success doesn't say anything about you unless you decide that it does, because you are an all-powerful being. So you can see what they have, or you can see what they did. And instead of choosing, and it is a choice, instead of choosing to feel bad about yourself, remind yourself that you're a unique being, first and foremost, and try on being excited or happy or proud of whoever that person was and whatever they did. Because I bet that person that did that presentation at work, they probably put a lot of time into it, right? Or maybe it's just in their zone of genius. So they were just firing on all cylinders with whatever it was, and they just did a really great job. Well, if it's something that you want to emulate, you can take inspiration from something that they did really well, and then share with them, that was a really amazing presentation. I love how you did X, Y, and Z. Because think about it, how often when we're playing that comparison game do we stop feeling sorry for ourselves and compliment the other person, or praise them, or celebrate with them? How different would it feel if we made the decision that on this wild human journey we're all on, each of us a unique soul in a unique human meat suit, that we celebrated other people as opposed to seeing the world as a place of scarcity and lack, where their success somehow detracts from your success? Because guess what? There is so much more abundance to go around than that. So you live in an abundant universe, and them having something or having done something doesn't ever mean that there's less for you. It's actually evidence, A, that it's possible, and B, that it's available. Because if one person has done it, you can do it. The example of the 4-minute mile, it was thought to be impossible for a human to run a 4-minute mile until Roger Bannister ran a 4-minute mile. And then within a matter of weeks, like a certain number of people ran a 4-minute mile. And I think to date, there have been 1,800 people that have run a 4-minute mile. If one person can do it, then see it as evidence that it's possible. And that is how you can start to switch this comparison game into something that's actually really, really helpful and nourishing for you, as opposed to being a way to beat yourself up, right? Because it's a very different energy. And part of this journey, if you're listening to this, if you follow me, like I said, then you have within yourself made a decision. I want to understand these places where I'm unconsciously treating myself like crap. Because fundamentally, that's what it is. It is not loving to you, to the unique creature that is you. It's not loving for you to spend your energy comparing yourself to that person and tearing yourself down and beating yourself up, and I should have done this or should have done that. You know how I feel about shoulds. You just chuck it in the fuck it bucket. We don't do shoulds. There is no should. And you find instead that when you can lovingly tell that voice that wants to come up and tell you all the reasons why you're not good enough and all the reasons why you'll never be good enough and just fussing at you and just that crappy internal talk track, that, if we're completely honest, if you spoke to another being that you loved in the voice with which you speak to yourself, chances are that person would be very hurt. They might even kick you out of their life, and they'd probably be justified in doing it. Now, this is if you haven't done any inner work. I hate the word inner work, but I haven't found a better way to say it. Any inner healing, shifting, raising of your consciousness around how you interact with yourself and around shifting and reprogramming that internal voice in your head. And that internal voice in your head, when you start to catch it and choose the meaning that you make of it, and instead of comparing yourself, stop and choose to celebrate that person for whatever it is they had, have, or did that has you in the comparison zone. Celebrate them. Send them love and gratitude and joy and excitement for the fact that they did this. Remind yourself that that person doing something or having something or being something doesn't take a damn thing away from you, because it is an abundant universe and there is enough to go around. See what inspiration you can take from that. See whatever that person did and say, ooh, I love that they did that. I want that. Or see that relationship they're in and go, ooh, that is a model for the relationship I'm going to have. Whatever it is, see it as evidence that it's possible and that it's available, and that it's available and possible for you. And then remind yourself that playing that comparison game, that internal crappy talk track, it's not loving to you. It is literally not good for your body, because every time we think a negative thought, we're actually producing hormones and chemicals that are associated with it that create that feeling in our body. Now, I just want to put a little asterisk here because, and this used to be me, so I'm saying this to the person out there who might be like I used to be. If you hear that and all of a sudden go into like a full body panic and freeze, that like every time you have a negative emotion, you're like, oh my God, I'm hurting myself, I gotta stop. And it just creates a bigger spin. If that's you, because that used to be me, then just remind yourself it's okay. It's all okay. The only reason I share that is to help educate you from a loving place, that loving your body, loving yourself is about choosing that new thought and choosing that new way of being, right? So if you haven't achieved whatever it is that you want to achieve by a certain point or at a certain benchmark that you think you should have achieved it, and you see someone else who's achieved the thing, and you find yourself starting to tell yourself a really crappy story, I want to invite you to just lovingly stop the spin and check in with yourself and go, wait a minute, what do I know to be true? I'm one in 1 billion people. I am unique. As my mentor says, I'm an unrepeatable miracle. No one else is like me. I am on my own journey. My responsibility is to basically stay in my lane, right? Tend to my own knitting, as a grandmother of mine or my mom, I don't know, somebody in my family used to say that, tend to your own knitting. Basically, mind your own business, stay in your lane, focus on what it is I'm doing, and take all that energy that I would have used for comparison and focus it into whatever it is that I am working toward, moving toward, magnetizing toward, and choose that instead, and choose to send love to the person that you're in comparison with. It may or may not be an appropriate time or place for you to celebrate them for whatever it is, but I'd also invite you to consider when you admire someone, and really that's the shift from comparison, is it's admiration of like, hey, it's really cool that you have X, Y, and Z, or you did X, Y, and Z. I really admire the relationship you have, or I admire the career that you have, whatever. How good does that feel? You're putting love out into the world. You're helping to celebrate someone else. And ultimately, by doing that, it's an act of love to yourself as well. So just remember, you run the show. You are the final decision maker on what you get to think, believe, how you act and feel. And when you catch yourself in that comparison game, Choose to see it as inspiration or as evidence that it's possible for you. Lovingly remind yourself that you are 1 in 8 billion. You are unique. You are on your own unique journey, on its own timeline, in its own time. And your only job is to keep walking that path one step at a time, 1% a day, with so much love, grace, and gratitude for yourself. And whatever it is, you'll eventually arrive there. It will come to you. And in the process, you will have loved yourself through it, which just automatically is going to create a lot of other awesome shit in your life. So stop playing the comparison game. It's not actually a game. It has no winner. It sucks. It's beating yourself up. We don't do that anymore. We're done with it. We've done it. Doesn't work. Doesn't feel good. So we're not going to do it anymore. Don't give up on yourself. And as always, sparkle on. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Courage to Rise podcast. Visit my website, couragetorise.com, for more information on one-on-one coaching, group coaching programs, and other upcoming events. Remember, life's too short not to sparkle. Sparkle on.